You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
There are two under-the-radar guys who could really step up and have their welcome to Syracuse moment in the absence of Trebor Pena, who once again, the star slot receiver, will not play according to Fran Brown tomorrow night against Pitt. Hopefully this is not a long-term injury, but he's not going to play tomorrow night against Pitt. And guys, hopefully someone can step up in his absence. The first player that has the opportunity to have their quote-unquote welcome to Syracuse moment, how about four-star true freshman, that's right, four-star true freshman, Emanuel Ross. Emanuel Ross does not have a catch this season, and he's also been dealing with injuries this year, and it's not a guarantee that he plays tomorrow night, but I think according to Fran Brown that it's looking good and that he's trending in the right direction, but we'll see. Let's be optimistic here. Let's assume that Emanuel Ross does play for Syracuse. Do we know exactly what Emanuel Ross is going to bring? I'll be honest with you. I got no clue. This is a true freshman that doesn't have a single catch this season. We know he has a lot of talent. He was a four-star out of high school, right? We have yet to really see him on the field, though. Okay, we've yet to really see him. But if you're looking for a one-for-one replacement to Trebor Pena, it's actually Emanuel Ross. It's him. Because when you look at the depth chart, Emanuel Ross is listed behind Trebor Pena as a slot receiver. I do kind of find it fascinating because Emanuel Ross is 6'2", 200 pounds. That is not exactly the body archetype of a slot receiver. Typically, slot receivers are a little bit smaller. Is that fair to say? They're usually a little bit smaller, right? But Emanuel Ross on the depth chart is listed behind Trebor Pena as the wide receiver 3, a.k.a. the slot receiver on a football team, right? Ross is listed once again, 6'2", 200 pounds. When I had Locked On recruiting expert Brian Smith on the podcast over the summer, we talked about all the prospects really of who Syracuse got in 2024, 2025, 2026. You get the idea. But we talked about Emanuel Ross on the podcast, and he said that Ross is more of a jump ball wide receiver. At least that's what he was in high school. So again, it's kind of curious that he's the backup slot receiver to Trebor Pena, right? I'm not sure he's the same route runner. Maybe he's got more pure talent than him. It's possible. I'm not exactly sure, but Trebor Pena's got a lot of talent. So it'll be interesting to see that, assuming Emanuel Ross, if he is healthy and he can go tomorrow night against Pitt, if he is used and how often he is used for Syracuse. He is the first under-the-radar guy who could step up in the absence of Trebor Pena, all right? Once again, Emanuel Ross, a four-star true freshman. Number 2, we talked a lot about this guy on the podcast. And once again, we had a lot of high hopes for this guy on the podcast. But this could be his chance. This could be his opportunity. It's Justus Ross-Simmons, the Colorado State transfer. Last game against NC State. In the build-up to it, remember, Fran Brown said in his pregame press conference that, hey, getting a guy like Justus Ross-Simmons fully healthy, it's like adding a big-time free agent to your team, and that he could have a big role against NC State. Well, he didn't have a single catch against the Wolfpack. I don't even think he was targeted. In fact, Justus Ross-Simmons, to this point, has played in 3 games for Syracuse and doesn't have a catch this year. So the two guys that I'm mentioning really are under the radar because neither of them have a catch this year, but both could see an uptick in playing time with no Trebor Pena on the field. He's yet to record a catch this season once again, but on the depth chart, the reason why I don't have him maybe ahead of Emanuel Ross as far as the two likely guys and why I listed Ross first is because if you look at where Justus Ross-Simmons is listed on the depth chart, he's behind Amari Hatcher. Amari Hatcher is a starting outside wide receiver. And remember, Trebor Pena is a starting slot receiver. So it's possible that they maybe shift around a little bit and have Justus Ross-Simmons move to the slot. That's possible. It could definitely happen. But if you're looking for a one-for-one, I think it would be more likely to be Emanuel Ross. Is that fair to say? But regardless, Justus Ross-Simmons, this could be his chance. This could be his chance to have that Wally Pipp moment, right? I talked about how he had been dealing with injury, a nagging hamstring injury at the end of training camp that bled into the start of the regular season. We thought that he could be a starting receiver on Syracuse football heading into the year, but obviously the injury, the hamstring injury hurt his chances there. And since that moment, multiple receivers have snatched that role away from him. Umari Hatcher took that role away from him, right? We thought that Zede Haynes would be the wide receiver 1, but the wide receiver 2 we thought would be Justus Ross-Simmons. Umari Hatcher took his spot. And he still has it according to the depth chart. He's played pretty well, Umari Hatcher. Right? He's played pretty well. I think we'd all agree with that. And then Jackson Meeks has been a revelation. He's been a breakout player, and we'll talk about it more on the next segment when we talk about how Syracuse football still has plenty of weapons to be able to get it done. Right? So Justus Ross-Simmons, he really hasn't gotten that opportunity yet because the receivers that either were behind him at the start of the year or were close to him at the start of the year, they've all played extremely good football. So therefore, Justus Ross-Simmons has just not been given the chance. Well, there's no Trebor Pena. Maybe this is the time for Justus Ross-Simmons to finally have his welcome to Syracuse moment, to take a starting wide receiver spot by the horn. Maybe this is his chance. All right. So those are two guys that are under the radar that could see an uptick in playing time, and maybe they have their welcome to Syracuse moments, and that is Emanuel Ross, a true freshman wide receiver, 4-star in the class of 2024, and Justus Ross-Simmons, a Colorado State transfer who we had high hopes for him, but unfortunately just hasn't gotten that opportunity quite yet. Maybe tomorrow night against Pitt is his chance.